The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Don Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hi.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hello to both of you.
Well, welcome back. We have some news. This is the season in which all the big tech companies, the FANG, I don't know if you've heard that acronym, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Amazon, and Google. I got them out of order, but it's FANG. They all make their big announcements for this year. So Facebook had F8. Microsoft is not in FANG, but they had their Build conference. Google just had I/O. I don't know when Netflix is doing its thing, but Apple's got the Worldwide Developer Conference coming up. So this is sort of the month and a half to 2 months where we get all this information. So our first segment, I wanted to talk about this news that came out of Facebook. Their big shift in focus. They've decided that privacy is the thing, which is ironic. But given their woes over the past couple of years, that would probably make sense that they're paying attention anyway. But part of this focus on privacy is they're de-emphasizing the news feed, which is that it's the main part of Google that you probably use. I mean, Facebook that you probably use that has all your friends' posts in it, in favor of groups, which are, it's sort of like a subset in which people gather under topics, or you have to intentionally join, or someone joins you for you. I have made it clear to my friends that I do not like being added to groups without being asked first. So we have these big changes. And so I thought we'd kind of go through the big announcements that Facebook has made, the big key changes that they say are coming. One by one, because there was a couple of key things that all work together. So the first one is this redesign. They're going to focus Facebook around groups and events. They said people are using groups, using the newsfeed less, and they want to go to groups and events. How do you use Facebook yourself primarily? We'll start with you, Pat. From your point of view, how do you use or prefer to use Facebook?
Okay, the first thing I do when I get into Facebook is go up and look at the notifications to see who's posted something in my feed. And I go through the ones that I like to keep up with most. And then later on, when I have time, I'll actually click on my feed button, and I like to see it in chronological order. So I've got a special bookmark for that. And then I'll go through and look at that. I've only got a couple of groups, and it sounds like groups is kind of like Google Circles,
right.
The old.
Yeah.
And I'd never caught on to using that either. I tried, but it wasn't what I used. And then Messenger, I only use with a couple of people, and very, very limited. Most of what I do is through the feed.
Yeah. How about you, Father Andrew, on Facebook? How do you use Facebook? I think you mentioned you don't use it a very lot. Was that you or?
I use it and I don't, kind of all at the same time. I don't post a lot unless I'm sharing a link or, a link to the podcast, or I often, if I post a picture on Instagram, that'll get pushed out to Facebook. But I don't Facebook isn't where I type something up and share it on my Facebook feed. So actually, I watched a bit of the conference, F8, and I'm kind of on the other side of it than Pat, because I actually do use groups and Messenger way more than I use the news feed. And probably because what's causing that is my news feed is just bombarded with a lot of just junk. And so I don't particularly like just scrolling through that. Occasionally there's family or friends that are posting pictures that I like to see, but where I'm way more interested is in the groups that I'm involved in, because that's usually what I use it for. And then what I also use it for is just to keep in touch with people. So I'm again using Messenger over just the Facebook newsfeed interface. So I actually think it's a good thing for me. I could get rid of the newsfeed and not really be too concerned about it. But I'm hoping they don't get rid of it entirely.
I wonder if there's a bit of a generational divide on that, whether folks who are younger tend toward groups, people that gathering in groups where things can be private and smaller discussions, and events. I'm an old married guy. I don't do events.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Events are just meaningless to me, except
exactly.
for when my church posts stuff about Easter Vigil or something. Other than that.
Sure.
Right. That's the thing, is I don't have much of the kind of social life that has me, going to all these events. I mean, maybe in a few years when my kids are grown out, but I tend to be a homebody with the kids a lot. So the events have never really been a big for me, except again, when I've worked for organizations that used events to connect with people.
Right.
So there's that. I mean, I do get that, it is kind of this divide. I use the news feed primarily, and my wife does, and a lot of our friends do. We share, and we use it in many ways like we used to use blogs. We share articles that are interesting and then have conversations about them. And I'm wondering if this reorganization goes where they claim it is, whether we'll just end up creating a big group that's that's everyone, sort of like when we ended up with doing Google Circles, where there was a circle that had the subset was of all your friends. And I wonder if that's kind of where that's going.
Sure. It might. I had a quick comment on your generational perspective. I think you might be very, very right there that when I first joined Facebook, it was exclusive to college students. I had to have a .edu email address to even join Facebook. And so even from that perspective, it was essentially the same thing, as you logged in using your college email and you were connected to the group of the college students who also used their email to log in. And then as Facebook opened things up, you have everybody joining Facebook, and perhaps the younger people, it's when grandma and grandpa get on Facebook and all the aunts and uncles, and there might be this sense of, well, I appreciated having this tight-knit group that, I don't necessarily want grandma and grandpa to whatever, see what I'm doing at college, which, for good or for ill. So perhaps that's feeding into this as well. That's not quite my perspective on it. As a public person, I have so many friends on Facebook, and I'm perfectly happy sharing whatever with everyone. But I still also, when I'm communicating with people, it's very much more of that individual or group kind of setting.
I kind of feel like that I might like to have groups where I could have subsets of friends, because right now the newsfeed is kind of, unless you are very careful about the privacy settings or the view settings of each post, it becomes tedious. So I end up just everything's public or friend. Some people it's just friends. But I would like to sometimes have places where I could talk about, say, controversial things with a group of friends that understand me, that we're not gonna end up in vituperation and anger and hurling insults or whatever. You know what I mean? It would be nice to have subsets of things. So I get that. I mean, I have a few groups. I have a Star Wars movie discussion group, and the Catholic TARDIS group I just joined, which is for Doctor Who fans, obviously Catholic Doctor Who fans.
Yeah.
Which as a host of The Secrets of Doctor Who, that seems to be a de rigueur for me. But so it remains to be seen. And some of these other announcements that they made sort of feed into that. I want to move to one of the other ones that they mentioned is changes to Instagram. So they're adding, new filters and things like that, and that's fine. That's always coming. But one of the things they're doing is they're experimenting with almost entirely hiding likes from the feed, and that's an interesting psychological thing. From my perspective, likes are whatever. I mean, sometimes I'll like a friend's post, but apparently I've heard podcasts and read articles that talked about for certain ages, especially like middle school and girls, especially, there's a huge social element to whether you've liked a friend's picture, how soon you've liked it, what your comment is on it. Like there's all this angst built up over that, and so I can see that. What do you think of that? Of this that's just changed to Instagram?
I think it's a great thing. As you were talking about it, it actually reminded me of MySpace when there were your top 8 friends.
Oh, yes.
And I remember being in high school and having a lot of angst when I had someone as my top 8 friends and I was not reciprocal
in
their top 8. And I mean, and it sounds incredibly silly, but as a middle schooler, as a high schooler, you're trying to find your way in the world. You're not exactly necessarily comfortable with who you are. And so you're looking for that affirmation. And so, of course, on MySpace or Instagram, it's kind of a false affirmation. And so I personally think it's great because if you take away the number associated with the likes, ideally what you're going to do is you're going to cut the pride aspect and the envy aspect. Both capital sins, of course, where one, I'm just looking at myself and wanted to gather as much likes as possible and be better than everybody else. But then the other one would be the opposite, that someone else is getting all these likes and therefore I am envious of them and want them to fail because they are outdoing me in likes. So I'm hoping that at least on a psychological level, maybe that's what some of the result will be, is that you'll finally just kind of not worry so much about the likes and focus more on, the family picture that you're sharing or whatever, your cute cat on Instagram or whatever you're sharing,
I remember reading about this group. I think it was This American Life did a story a couple years ago where this one girl, she was in 7th grade, was saying that she had to get up at 4:00 in the morning to check her Instagram in case any of her friends posted a picture overnight so that she could like it before school, so that she didn't get there and they say, well, you didn't like my photo, what's wrong with you, and exclude her. I mean, this is, I think the whole like ecosystem, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatnot, has really tapped into a psychological soft spot in us. And that young people, as you mentioned, Father, are especially vulnerable to that because they're building their social muscles at that age. They're really figuring out who they are and how they fit in. So that's a good point. Pat, anything on that?
Well, I don't use Instagram, but I was thinking about likes and views in terms of, like, I use Facebook also to share technical information. And so I do use likes and how many people have viewed it to know whether a particular topic might be something that more people are interested in, so I can, make sure that I follow up on something. But I don't use Instagram likes. Didn't I hear that Twitter was going to be doing away with likes? Or
I think there's talk of it. Yeah, there's talk of it either changing it to something else or doing away with it altogether. But then you just use retweets as a measure of popularity. But
yeah, that's true.
You make a good point, which is because Facebook has the algorithm, so it doesn't just show you everything. It tries to figure out what you will want to see, using magic and smoke and mirrors. But part of it is based on how often, like, for a post is liked or commented on and that sort of thing. But if they're hiding that, or shared, if they start hiding that, then it becomes harder to figure out, well, is this a post that will get traction? Do I continue to ask people to like a post even if no one can see it? I mean, it's sort of
is it valuable?
Right.
You're asking if a post is valuable. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So that introduces some uncertainty in that. And in fact, all of these changes introduce uncertainty, not just for individual profiles, but for people like me who operates pages for StarQuest and for podcasts that we do and that sort of thing. If we're not in the groups, we're only in the news feeds and less so these days, unfortunately. So what are we going to do? And one of the things that Facebook has been encouraging pages to do is to create groups associated with your page, which we may do. We may start a StarQuest group. That might be a fun thing to do.
So basically what you're almost doing is converting what used to be a page into a group.
Yeah, the page still exists, but a lot of the interaction will be in a group, because then the interactions right now, for StarQuest, happen based on individual episodes of shows, because that's mainly what we post in our page. Whereas a group could be anything, any conversation. Anyone can start a conversation, that sort of thing. So it bears some watching. The thing is the users will do what the users will do. No matter how they reorganize the app, people will still do things. So let's talk about the next big change, which is the prominence of Facebook Messenger. Right now, Messenger lives as a separate app on your phone, but it's built into the desktop. And they've talked about they're going to start end-to-end encrypting Messenger, which is one of the big criticisms. iMessage on iOS has been end-to-end encrypted, which means that your phone encrypts it on one side, and all the way through the internet to the other person's phone, it is not readable by anyone until it gets to the other person's phone, and then that person can read it. And that's high privacy, high security. And Messenger has not been that to this point. And so they're going to start end-to-end encrypting, and then they're going to put a lot of these. It's almost like they want to push your close friend social network into Messenger. There'll be a lot of these group discussion sort of features in it, and really aimed at people who kind of know each other in real life, I think. So what do you think of that? I think I like the idea of a desktop app for Messenger, frankly, because I find Messenger in the browser to be a kind of a pain. And sometimes I'll get a message, and I'll pick purposely, and I'm at my computer, but I'll pick up my phone because it's easier to reply there. So what anything about the changes to Messenger that interest you?
I again think that it's a positive thing, because I use Messenger a lot, even in the sense of I've connected with people kind of outside of my normal group of friends, whether it's out in the community, like I said, with Pokemon Go, I've connected with people and have been able to touch base with them individually through Messenger. But also things like we're putting together a food truck festival where we're bringing a bunch of food trucks to the cathedral, and to reach out to them through Facebook Messenger has been my primary means of communication. And so I again am glad that they're focusing a lot on, especially the privacy part. I think that is
that's a biggie.
A step towards healing the mistakes that Facebook has made, and it's still going to take some time to work through that. But I think I think it's a good thing, and it's a way for me even to be able to communicate with people, and I don't have to give out my personal cell phone number. So it helps on that level too. And then I can send attachments through Messenger. I can send pictures. I could even do a video call if I really wanted to. So I think the changes are positive.
Yeah, I have I'm a den leader in my boys' Cub Scout troop, and I have to communicate regularly with the other den dads, and it's kind of a pain because we do it all via text, and it's such a hassle, the texting and making sure we get everybody's number. All these guys are on Facebook. We should just have a Facebook Messenger group that we use, and I think that sort of thing makes sense. I know that some people have moved from Facebook to communicate with their close friends to things like Slack, which is a business communications tool. We use it in StarQuest for organizing things. I've actually mentioned it to my wife that maybe we should start a family Slack team. She is opposed to this idea. She thinks it's way too much, way too geeky and complicated. But
she thinks you'd be a slacker.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. But so I like the idea of these changes to Messenger. So
I've got a couple of comments. I guess I don't use Messenger as much because sometimes I got burnt by a relative posting a group message in Facebook.
Yeah.
And it was this constant bombardment of replies and stuff. And they finally gave you a way to leave the group message. But that kind of just turned me off of Messenger. The other thing is I noticed that in the write-up on Messenger, they talked about maybe including more stories. So it's almost like what they're trying to do is recombine Messenger with what they like about Facebook. So they'd separated them out for a while. It's almost like, oh, we're going to bring stories back. So we're almost combining them again. And stories, to me, is weird because most of the stories I see are a still picture that is played like a video. When people don't understand how to use it or whatever. And it's like they post it on Instagram too. And then, it's like, I don't understand the purpose of stories except that it goes away.
Yeah, it's a visual post, I guess. I mean, it's a picture-based post, and I kind of get that, but you're right. I don't use stories. I sometimes look at other people's stories, but I don't necessarily get it. I don't think we're the audience for it. I think this is how a younger demo is using the social media, and they're not posting things that have necessarily that they want to have lasting value in long conversations. They want to post reactions and quick things, and
right, maybe so.
Yeah, but it feels cluttered. It does feel cluttered, and it feels like they keep shoving stories at us everywhere they can, in Instagram and Facebook, and hey, it's in Messenger. Take a look at it over here. And if the message is clear, we're not the primary audience for it, I guess. But
I even think that the audience is below me because I think stories are kind of strange, and I wonder. And I don't know the genesis of it, but I suspect it might be Snapchat is the origins of that whole idea, which I have just found completely odd and silly.
Pointless.
When I post something to Instagram or Facebook, I don't want it to be there for 24 hours and then disappear. I'm there to share it with whomever and to be able to go back to it or have comments or threads. And the stories are like, yeah, if you're at an event and you're posting at the event with a story, it's kind of a live updating of what you're doing and then it disappears. But again, that's contrary to what I want to use Instagram and Facebook for. And so I Snapchat, the youth made me get it when I went to World Youth Day, and I quit using it about a month later because I just couldn't do it. So.
Yeah, I had some friends who were Snapchat users. Father Roderick Von Hogen was one of the founders of SQPN. Especially, I think he was still using it when he did his Camino to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, and he did a lot of Snapchatting. But I found it kind of exhausting. Not from him, just in general, trying to keep up with my friends' Snapchats. Like, oh, it's going to go away. I've got to watch it before it goes away, and oh, the anxiety. I'm like, no. I admit I have a psychological issue with FOMO. All right, I have a fear of missing out things. And so I have to I got to make sure I use it. I got to make sure I do it. I make sure I don't miss it. No, it's a little too much, too anxious for me. I'm fine with just finding things on Facebook. And I mean, this is why I don't use Twitter as much as I should, because the feed just flies past. It's too fast, and I miss, half the conversations. So I could do without stories. So they mentioned something about the Oculus Rift in the what is it? Oculus Rift Quest and the Oculus Rift S. More of the headsets, the VR headsets. It didn't look like that there was a lot of change to this. The price is interesting, $399. It's too high for me, but it's interesting that it's coming down. So VR seems to be still hanging on. We had a discussion, I think, a few episodes ago where we talked about, we thought maybe AR is more likely to have a long term. But was there anything about the VR that caught your eye that was interesting?
I'm interested in it because of Vader Immortal.
Well, yes, there's that.
So that's I did pre-order one of the Oculus Quests, so I'll have to let you know. And I haven't been too sold on VR, but the new Star Wars game has me quite intrigued.
That's true. I'm not going to think too much about that because I really cannot spend that much.
If I ever get to Boston, I'll let you try mine.
Oh, good. I'll hold you to that.
Okay, perfect.
So you can do a story about it and
that's right,
photograph yourself doing it.
Oh my gosh, that's
you know how ridiculous I would look.
It's the Inception. It's Facebook Inception.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the. This is the best one because this is the worst idea. I think might be the worst idea I've ever seen. it's so apparently Facebook is testing Facebook dating in 14 countries, not the U.S. And this is why it's not the U.S. because this is going to end up, as they're testing it out and figuring out how it works, there will be a ton of bad things happen to people through Facebook dating, and they don't want that to be in the New York Times and the LA Times and the Chicago Tribune or whatever newspaper on a regular basis. So they test it outside of the country until they feel like they get the worst of the bugs out of it. So Facebook dating, and part of this Facebook dating is they're going to have a feature called Secret Crush. And this is what you create a secret list of Facebook friends that you're attracted to, that you have a crush on. You get already what the age range that they're aiming at here is. And if they also are using Secret Crush and you're on their list, Facebook will notify the two of you that there's a match. This is a terrible idea. I mean, I can think of half a dozen ways this can be abused. I mean, how many marriages will be destroyed by this? I mean, this right off the bat on that. I mean, this is the idea of people, oh, I'm just going to create this list for fun, just to see what happens. And then suddenly something pops up. I mean, oh my gosh, this is a horrible thing. I mean, stalking, catfishing, all of these internet problems. Sorry, my rant's over. Why don't you join in with what you have to say about Facebook dating and Secret Crush?
It sounds like junior high school.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to create the list of the boys or the girls that I like and, secretly share that list around. It's absolutely horrible, I think. But in general, I don't know, I was kind of trying to relate it to online dating, because that's essentially what they're trying to do, but within Facebook's setup. And I still am not a fan of online dating. I think you're lacking, and even the whole social media, Facebook, all of this, you're lacking actual physical one-to-one real interaction with people. And I have to be careful what I say too, because my brother and sister-in-law met on Catholic Match. So
right.
Well, I was going to say there are some
success stories.
People that is the way they met, but that was just the introduction. They followed it up in real life.
Yeah. That's definitely the key. And so if you're matched up with someone on Facebook because you have a crush on them, there is no actual deeper connection there other than lust, dare I say, or a physical attraction.
Well, the key here is that you have to already be friends on Facebook. Okay. So now that doesn't mean I have thousands of Facebook friends. Many of these people I don't actually know personally. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And I do want to clarify, while there are many people who met online and through online dating and who have wonderful relationships, so it's not to say that online dating can't lead to good outcomes, but that online dating introduces new dangers. Maybe is that a way that weren't there in other kinds of dating? New problems that we're still sorting out as a society, I think. So the thing here is, so with Facebook dating, you have to create a dating profile, but you don't need a dating profile in order to have a secret crush list. So they're not necessarily synonymous too. But I get what Facebook is thinking. Like they know more about everybody. What is it? 3 billion people. They knew more about 3 billion people than any other institution in the world. And they have the social graph that they talk about. So who better to find the perfect match for you is what they're thinking. And I'm thinking, this is a terrible idea. I mean, it creeps me out even more how much they know. And frankly, once they start, sending ads to married people to start join Facebook dating, because they will, because I get ads for all kinds of crazy stuff that doesn't really apply to me on Facebook. Like, I don't know. It's just this is a bad thing that's going to happen to a lot of people if this rolls out. I just hope they.
So what you're saying is it would become an adulterers club at some point.
Right. What was that adulterers dating site that got?
There was one.
Oh, yeah. They had they actually got hacked and all this information got out and all these people freaked out. Serves you right. Yeah, it's just a bad. I think it's a bad idea. It's just, oh, I can't. I just got. For humor, I just so like to sit and think about what was that meeting like where they came up with this idea, like where they all said, "Oh, that's a great idea." Oh,
What were they smoking?
yeah, right. All right. Well, speaking of smoking, maybe we'll move on to our next segment, our next topic for today. This is also sort of privacy related, and it's about how this study was done by let's see, the University of New South Wales, that's in Australia, and the Department of Psychiatry at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, that's here in Boston where I am. They had a study that they did of the 36 of the top ranking free apps that help you stop smoking or help you deal with depression that are available for Android and iOS in the US and Australia. Okay, so the 36 apps for smoking cessation and helping you deal with mental health issues. And there's a lot of data there, but the bottom line is they found that most of these apps failed to provide disclosure of them giving private information of their users to third parties. So the question is what kind of information? Is this something we should be worried about? Some people said, well, they're only sharing analytics, basic analytics that every app has to, how many people open the app, when do they open it, what features do they use, anonymized. But what do you think of this?
I could see where if it ever got beyond the general analytics, where they start pinning you down by how many were of a certain age did, of a certain region, where you live. I know one of the security experts that I listened to his podcast on talked about that really it develops a fingerprint. Even though you don't know their name, you have something that actually ties back to an individual through all of these connections. And so it's a short jump to being able to tell your insurance company that, gosh, you're interested in a smoking cessation app, or your employer that you're using an antidepressant app. That's scary.
It turns out that even though they don't share your username, there are these anonymized advertising identifiers. You are user number 13579, say, and that identifier is used across apps and across services, so they can then begin to track your behavior throughout the internet or over in space, even like if they track your phone being in a particular place, and that can create a digital fingerprint of you that could possibly identify you. That's kind of scary. So one of the things I read about was how a Kickstarter user was sued by the FTC. A Kickstarter project was sued by the FTC because they were selling the information about their backers to third parties. Hey, these are people who are interested enough in this kind of product to back a Kickstarter, and that's how they were profiting from the Kickstarter. They made something like $100,000 from doing that. Just from that part. Never mind what they collected from the.
It's hard because in this day and age, you almost can't expect privacy if you're going to do anything online, because there's always something, your IP address, something is going to connect you to, the websites that you go to, the apps that you use. And so, I think it's a problem, but I am more inclined to say if you're going to use some sort of device to try to help you quit smoking or help with depression, I would avoid the apps entirely unless it's just an informative sort of thing rather than a tracking sort of thing.
One of the points that was made in one article I was reading was saying, if you're going to use an app like this, make sure it's not internet connected. In other words, that you're not logging in with a user ID password, that it is, and they also said iOS apps were much more secure than Android apps in terms of that type of problem.
Apple does lock that sort of thing down. Yeah. One of the things that's more from a Catholic perspective is there are a number of apps that help you with going to confession.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the examination of conscience. It's a Catholic practice where we look at what we've done and see if there are any sins we need to confess, and these things kind of guide you through, certain behaviors and things that you might have done, and you could, and some of them let you check it off, and then you go into the confessional and you read your checklist, and that sort of information, once it's recorded digitally, it could potentially be slurped up. When I've used those sorts of things, I'm trying to get away from that sort of thing and just using one that I just read and think about and try to remember. Remembering things that this day and age is not as easy for me as it once was, but I'll try to make a good confession. But back in the time when I would use these apps and check things off, I would download the app when I got into the church or before, use it, and then with cell data turned off, and then delete it before I turn cell data back on. I mean,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
it's hard though.
Yeah, and that's maybe a little more paranoid than I needed to be, but I still felt better. Not that there's anything in there. I mean, at this point, the stuff in my confessions are they're pretty mundane. I'm not a secret mastermind super criminal out there that's hiding in plain sight. I mean, it wouldn't bother me too much, but I'm still not going to tell you all what I confess. But nevertheless, there's certain behaviors that that we maybe need to pick up and think about, or at least think about.
Ultimately, I don't think there is anything at all wrong with a good old-fashioned pencil and paper.
That's right. There is something to be said for that. And I see more and more people carrying around notebooks and journals. And I've had the case where I tried to read from my list in confession and my phone, timed out and turned off. And I'm like, excuse me, Father, while I enter my password. It's just, yeah, a little piece of paper and a match. And a little
Yep.
that takes care of it.
Isn't that what the votive lights are for?
The sensor for the incense, yes.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to something a little more uplifting, perhaps, and our picks of the week. I always enjoy hearing what everyone has to pick and offer to our audience. This is where we something that's caught our eye, something that's interesting from a tech perspective. So, Pat, I'll let you go first. What's your pick of the week this week?
Okay, well, I see a lot of people out in my job, and so one of the things that they're concerned about is how many spam calls they're getting, or scam calls, or fraud calls, or telemarketers. And in looking into that, AT&T has a app that's free for any of their users called AT&T Call Protect. When you look at Call Protect, it actually uses the platform Hiya, Hiya, as its base. So for people who aren't on AT&T, they could go to Hiya and download that app on either Android or iOS, and it would be a help to block or notify you when a telemarketer's calling. So you can just look at it and say, nope, not going to answer it. The fraud calls, the ones that they consider fraud, it actually blocks the call. You get a notice that somebody tried, but it never rings. You never see it. And I like that.
It is very nice.
There are a whole bunch of partners with Hiya that are on the Samsung and a couple of other devices. Plus, I put a link in my notes about other places like Verizon, what they're using. They're using a variant, I think, of No More Robo.
Yep.
And so, at any rate, that whole idea of lessening the angst or the anxiety when a phone call comes in, that's kind of what my pick of the week was.
Excellent. Yeah, there are a lot of good apps out there, and nowadays most of the carriers have one that they're providing to their users free of charge. So definitely check that out. That's a good one. Thank you. Father Andrew, you had something fun this past week, and I think maybe your pick of the week?
Yeah, so actually it's kind of fun, Pat. Your link that you posted
yes,
in the notes is from Kim Komando, who she wrote a column in February, and so that's one that Pat was referring to. But my pick of the week is Kim Komando's whole slew of her website, her radio show, and all the things that she does. She is a nationally syndicated radio talk show host on all things technology. And so she has been on she does a 3-hour weekend show, and she's been on the air for well over 20 plus years. I'm not entirely sure exactly how long. And so she has all sorts of news, tips, tricks, free podcasts. She's now on the Bloomberg TV show talking about technology, and she has people call into her weekend radio show, from things to, I'm buying a new camera, what should I get, to how do I secure my router, the whole gamut of all things technology she'll deal with. And so I threw her in, and her website, komando.com is her website. And I wanted to throw her to my pick of the week, because this particular week I had the privilege of being on the Kim Komando show. And I got to talk about my journey with her because I've known her personally for close to 15 years. I started to listen to her on a cassette tape from my Aunt Kay had given me a cassette tape of the Kim Komando show. And so 15 years ago, I started listening to her show and had the opportunity to beta test her website back in 2006, and then got invited to fly to Phoenix with a bunch of other beta testers to meet her. And so I brought my Aunt Kay along, and we got to meet Kim and all of her staff. And we've been in touch ever since. She's Catholic, and so that was another cool connection there. And her and I have been in communication pretty much the entirety of my journey. And I was going to go into computer science when I graduated, and then I jumped into seminary, and then, of course, got to become a co-host for The Secrets of Technology, which was a phenomenal thing. And God just kind of, was plotting this course for me. And so I texted Kim and shared with her the good news, and she immediately invited me to come on the show and share the entire story. So if you listened at all to the weekend of May 4th and 5th, I was on during the first hour sharing my story, and gotta make a plug for the Secrets of Technology podcast, which was awesome. And I'll be on Bloomberg TV sometime in the coming weeks, so that should be awesome too.
Awesome. Well, welcome
so cool.
to the Kim Komando listeners who've ventured out to check out this
Absolutely.
podcast. We hope you enjoy it and stay subscribed. And I'll see if I can find a link to that first hour of the podcast too, so they can get people directly to that, so they can check that out.
We'll probably have to wait until it airs on Bloomberg TV, because to access her weekend podcast, you have to be a Kim's Club member, which costs.
Okay.
But once it gets up on Bloomberg TV, she posts those on YouTube. So I will forward that link around.
All right, we'll get that out. So the listeners can check it out too. So that's awesome. Great.
And just to clarify too, Kim has a bunch of other podcasts that she does that are completely free of charge, and all of her tips and stuff on her website and news are also free of charge.
Awesome.
She has an email newsletter too that I subscribed to way back when, and so I've been a Kim Komando follower for a long time. And so I was really tickled when I saw that you were on there. That's so cool.
Awesome.
And I had no idea she was Catholic.
Yeah, I didn't either until at one point she mentioned her son's confirmation, and so it caused me to ask her, because her son Ian was in 3rd grade at the time, and in Phoenix, where she's located, they have reordered the sacraments, so they receive confirmation and first communion at 3rd grade. And so then that prompted the whole conversation. So.
Well, since she goes by Digital Goddess, I would not have thought she was Catholic.
Yeah, and she has a trademark too. So
yes, she does.
Very good. Actually, Pat, I heard about Kim Komando first from you.
You did?
You had sent me forwarded an email message. Just to remind folks, Pat, it's my mother-in-law, and so we've known each other for nigh on 12, 13 years. And so I remember you sending me a link way back when. So that's very cool. Excellent. Thank you, Father Andrew. That's awesome. So.
Absolutely.
My pick is a bit unusual. It's not electronic. In fact, it is not powered at all except by human force, but it is a gadget. It is the Sunjoe push mower, or a rotary reel mower. Now, I would never have imagined that I would give up my gas mower for a push mower. In fact, I haven't given up the gas mower. I still got it. But I got a chance to try this out, to review it. A few months ago, and we finally have weather where we can actually mow in New England. So, and one of the things that I've been thinking lately is I want my kids to sort of help out with the yard work. And my son is about to turn 10. Yeah, he's about to turn 10 this summer. And I didn't feel confident with him pushing a gas mower. I thought it might be too much for him and he'd get overwhelmed by it. But a push mower, it's just his speed. And he loves getting out there, and he gets a workout, and he works up a sweat. And little boys, they need to work up a sweat and get out there and do some work. And then my 8-year-old, he's out there too, and he's decided he wants to help out, and so he's doing it. It's a little different from a regular mower. It doesn't have the engine to power through things, so every twig and stick you have to kind of stop, and if you're big enough, like an adult man, you could push right through most of the twigs, and you'll break them up with the rotary. But with the kids, they have to flip the thing, pull out the twig, and then go back at it. But it's great. I don't have to buy gas. I don't have to take it to the shop for maintenance. It's ready to go at a moment's notice, and it's actually, I'm really excited, and it's fairly inexpensive. It's under $100 on Amazon, and so it's a good deal. So if you never thought about it, maybe consider it. I mean, it's hey, good for the environment, all that sort of stuff too. If that's important,
good exercise.
It's good exercise, good aerobic exercise. It's not too hard. Pretty much anybody can do. It's geared pretty well, so it gets a good head of steam on it without too much effort. So check it out. Think you might want to, if you've not thought about it before, give it some thought. Maybe this is something for you. So we'll have the links for all of our picks of the week in our show notes. Let's maybe wrap things up. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Mark S., Thomas D., John B., Ted K., and Bruce G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them in making this possible by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of our discussion topics? We talked about Facebook's announcements and these apps that share your private data and our picks of the week. Let us know by visiting sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and leave some feedback or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. And we'll have the links to all of the headlines, all the news stories that we talked about, and to our picks of the week in our show notes on sqpn.com. Folks, I want to ask you a favor. Can you go to iTunes or to wherever you get your podcast from, whichever directory, and write a review? A nice 5-star review would be nice. The reviews kick in the algorithm that shows the podcast to more people. And that's a way to spread the news about the podcast and help bring in more listeners and grow our community. That's a huge part of why we do this. We want to reach as many people as possible with this content. And if you could share the podcast with your friends, and that's a huge help to us. We can't afford to advertise, and Father Angel's not going to be on Kim Commando every week, so we've got to get the news out somehow to more people that we're going to be on. And if you have any ideas for things you'd like us to discuss, please send us that email to technology@sqpn.com. We're always looking for topics and things to talk about and what interests you and what you want to know about. Definitely send it to us. So really appreciate that. Until next time, Pat Scott, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
It's been fun. Enjoyed it.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you as well.
Absolutely, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.